entering the Mayo Experience.
That Mayo Experience. That Mayo Experience. That Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Bat Mayo Experience, presented by DraftKings. Preseason Week 1 news, notes, happenings, plus some updated rankings. You can find all of the rankings down in the description for each position. All of the top 150 rankings released Tuesday. Doing a show with Jake Seeley on that as well. Plus me, Custin, Jeff, ranking the quarterbacks, not for fantasy, just overall, coming on Thursday. So football content back in full force for you on Mayo Media Network. So subscribe to Mayo Media Network. That's pretty simple stuff, right? It's completely free to do. Same as the newsletter that will get you up-to-date information down in the description. Smash the like while you're here as well. And you can always use runthesims.com to make your season-long projections per player completely customizable. And here's the catch. Completely free to use as well. Just go create an account at runthesims.com. Get those projected out for you in the way that you see things going on. Now, you want the DFS and betting package and simulations for the year. Plus, we have one new tool to rule them all coming very, very soon. It has to do with simulations. Once again, we already run 10,000 simulations in under 5 seconds for each player. So if you want your player props, your DFS lineups, whatever it might be, that's easy. We might have some DFS tournament simulations coming as well. So that's probably something you gotta want to do. Runthesims.com code Mayo will get you 10% off the package for 2023. Highly recommend that you do that now. Let's try to rapid fire through some of these guys. We're going to start off with Davante Adams. You can see the week 1 stuff for him up here right now at runthesims.com. So we have a few different notes on Davante Adams at the moment. He left practice Friday. They're saying it's not too serious. Renfrow and Myers are going to be the 2 slot guys, presumably, on Vegas at the moment. The funny part is, like, when you take a look at the guys who are either playing on the outside opposite Adams or who would replace him, it is like the character actor group of the NFL at receiver, that guys at receiver. You got Alanis Dorsett, Keelan Cole Sonor, Cam the Sims, DeAndre Carter. Like, everyone has picked up one of these guys or played them at the min on DraftKings over the years just to try to fill out a lineup. And I almost guarantee you they disappointed you, which is not great to see. So for week 1, this is all week 1 stuff right now. You can see that Vegas is playing Denver. The DraftKings salary for Davante Adams is $7,900, which I think is a very nice price. But if he didn't play, you can see how you'd have to reallocate some of these target numbers. Maybe it's Austin Hooper or Michael Mayer who ends up boosting up the board. Maybe Trey Tucker gets a bit more of a look, but that's really tough. And for the record, I don't think that Jimmy G is going to be like a terrible fantasy play this season, just because I think the Raiders are going to be really bad and having to throw the entire time. Although this is probably not a great matchup against Denver, although they are 4.5-point dogs in week 1. That Denver's defense, I believe, should be pretty good. Some more Raiders news. They signed Damian Williams this week with Josh Jacobs still holding out. Darwin Thompson. Remember Darwin Thompson? Hot fantasy sleeper of 2-3 years ago, whenever it was, Darwin Thompson. Well, he's meeting with them as well. So that leads me to believe 2 things. One, they're trying to put pressure on Josh Jacobs to come back and sign his deal to make sure that he's ready for week 1. Maybe he does have the holdout week 1, then returns for week 2, because dude doesn't want to be giving up that money, because the money's not out there for Josh Jacobs. So eventually he's going to have to come back and play. But this is putting a little pressure on him, potentially, or it's kind of an indictment on Zamir White that they don't think that he's all that good and they want to bring guys in. So let's say Jacobs isn't there week 1. We'll head on over to Run the Sims. It's just, it's just a little exercise that we can do. We're going to put him in for 0%. That's the letter O. We probably don't want to do that. So we'll put him in for 0% of everything. Say he doesn't play. And we actually don't have the system updated yet for Damian Williams being on the team. But let's just pretend in this situation that Jacob Johnson is Damian Williams. Who do you think would actually be the primary ball handler? Now, it's probably Zamir White. He has the most experience on this team. Let's throw him for 45% of the market share of rushes. So you can see we still have 25% to allocate around. So let's give those to Johnson, who is actually Damian Williams in this circumstance. And we have 57% of touchdown market share to go along. Well, we already have Bolden at 21%, Brandon Bolden that is, so we're going to keep him there. We'll put Zamir White up to 45% again, and we still have the 20% to go around. I think that if Damian Williams, now that he's signed on this team, guy's good, or at least he was good. I have no idea if he's still good. at this point, but we'll try to put him in. He might end up being like a pretty decent sleeper because you know that he's 26 is wrong. 18 is the number that I'm looking for, I believe. Yeah, there we go. And I think that you're going to see less of Zamir White in the passing game, although if we put his market share of targets at where we have 10% to reallocate, we'll put him at 2. We'll bump up Bolden to 3. Amir Abdullah would probably see a bit more run in that circumstance. Maybe it's Abdullah is the one that would really pop up. So you can kind of say they'd kind of go with like a 3-4 headed backfield here and just kind of distribute everything around in terms of receptions, goal line touches, whatever it might be. We'll bump him up to 6 and bump him up to 7 and just kind of, we'll run the Sims on this right now and see where these guys end up coming out. This is how quickly everything can work. This is running 10,000 simulations of every single game. Boom. Austin Eckler, best play on the slate for week 1. But this is for all the games. I don't have it just in as the main slate. We'll see the projections per week as well. And we'll go to running back. And what do we want to take a look at? Jacob Johnson. So Damian Williams would be around 7.2 fantasy points, 6 carries, 24 yards, 0.1 of a touchdown, 2 catches for 13 yards. And that's, if he gets himself involved, and we'll know more about that, I think, or at least we can try to read the tea leaves from what we see throughout the course of the preseason to see how integrated he gets into that offense. Now, maybe it is all Zamir White. I'm completely wrong. Or maybe it's more Amir Abdullah in the passing game. But just because Josh Jacobs isn't there, I think the point that I'm trying to make is that potentially Damian Williams could be the primary ball handler. And even if he's not, even if he just minimally plays, that Zamir White might not be in the sort of smash spot that you think that he would be in week 1. Again, once we see the ones run for Vegas and Zamir White is on for every single snap, I will change my tune on that. But this is the way that I think that it's going to go at the moment. So Adams is going to be fine, and pay attention to that Raiders backfield because there might not be the bounty that you think that there is going to be because A, they're bad. B, they're underdogs, especially in week 1, which is the game that, if anything, now Jacobs probably doesn't miss week 1, but if he does, this is the hypothetical that we're looking at here, that it could be a situation where they're throwing it to him. Maybe Amir Abdullah is going to be the play. I would guess that Damian Williams would kind of fill in that spot. Like, why else bring him in? He can kind of be someone who carries the ball and catches the ball, where Amir Abdullah is mainly just a pass catcher and special teams player at this point. So if you're not going to pile up 25 carries on the ground, I think that limits what Zamir White might be able to do, especially if they can use someone like Brandon Bolden inside the red zone, which is a distinct possibility at this point. Now, if Jacobs is there, it's all Jacobs all the time. Wouldn't worry about him. Joe Burrow is up next. Obviously, he has the calf strain. I expect him to play in week 1. He threw on Friday. I think he's going to be fine. So I have no real reservations about Joe Burrow. I talked to Dr. Morse last week about his injury, where it is soft tissue and it is a calf strain. He is at the point of a potential reoccurring injury. Not saying it's going to happen, but he might miss time somewhere along the line. So I did drop him down to, I believe, quarterback number 5 or 6 in my rankings. I had him at number 3 in terms of fantasy, but I think I bumped him down below Justin Fields. I think I have at number 5. I think it's Mahomes, Allen, Hurts, someone, Fields? I don't know. Go look at the rankings. I don't have them. I probably should have put them up in front of me, but you can find the link down in the description. Kenny Gainwell. Could he be the early down back in Philadelphia this season? Probably not. It's probably just a way to make sure that you keep, when you have the walking triage unit of Rashad Penny and DeAndre Swift technically in front of you, I just think it's going to be a 3-headed backfield. I don't know how you're going to derive that much value from any of these guys, but they really like Kenneth Gainwell. He's their 2-minute drill guy, so that's always valuable. I don't know how much goal line work that he's going to get. I actually think the Rashad Penny is still the best play in this backfield. Maybe he can stay healthy, and even if he doesn't, he didn't cost you that much of a draft pick anyway. He's the most explosive runner of the bunch, and I think that he'll see the majority of the work on the ground. Majority is probably a bit much. The plurality of the work on the ground, which might be good enough because of his big play potential. Also, Athletic report saying that Trey Sermon, another hot fantasy sleeper from the 49ers last year or the year before. It looks like he's potentially going to beat out Boston Scott for a roster spot. I'm assuming they cut him for the games they play against the Giants just to bring Boston Scott back so he can score his obligatory touchdown, but Boston Scott on the roster bubble right now, according to theathletic.com. Kareem Hunt is in Minnesota for a meeting. By the time you watch this, maybe he's signed, maybe he's taking a plane out of there. Dalvin Cook did not end up with the Jets, so a good I mean, as of right now. Good news for Breece Hall and his prospects going forward. It still doesn't mean he won't sign at this point. So Kareem Hunt would throw a bit of a monkey wrench into what people hope for Alexander Mattison. Additionally, if it's not Kareem Hunt, Ty Chandler has been being hyped by Kevin O'Connell after Thursday's game. So you can put him on the handcuff watch if Kareem Hunt doesn't end up in Minnesota. I do think that you're looking at a potential workhorse role if Kareem Hunt isn't there for Alexander Mattison, but there's a chance that he's just not all that good. So maybe they do work in Ty Chandler a little bit more. Like, would you rather draft? I'm trying to look at, I don't have the DK best balls in front of me, but when I've been doing DK best ball drafts, that he's been going in like, the 40s to 60s range, even in season long, which is not a hefty price to pay, especially if you go wide receiver heavy at the beginning, because the potential upside is there because he could be the workhorse. But if he sucks and you don't have him, maybe you want to take Ty Chandler late if Hunt doesn't end up going there because maybe he's good or just as good and they just turn to him instead. The Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet debate continues to rage. Charbonnet came back, looked pretty good in terms of health. Kenneth Walker is going to be returning soon, so it doesn't seem like these injuries are piling up too much, that they're both going to be fine for week one, so no need to be wary of these guys, although groins can be reoccurring injuries. Running backs get hurt all the time, so as long as they're healthy for week one, you probably have to roll with them, so I wouldn't worry too much about them. Rams news, and we'll head back over to Run the Sims for a second with this one. If you go to DFS Tools, NFL Project and Builder, these are the free tools that you can build for the year. We'll go to the Rams right now. Boom. We can take a look at this. Kareem Williams. Not the first time I've heard this one. He's getting talk at a Rams camp. I went down that road last year. It was not good. You can see Cam Akers for the season. We have projected at 56% of the market share of rushes, with Williams at 13, Zach Evans at 8, Royce Freeman at 5, then just some other jabronis. Like we have Cooper Kupp and Tutu Atwell at 3% of the rushes apiece, Ronnie Rivers at 1. As long as Akers is up above that 56% number and even into the 60s, he's going to be a fine fantasy play. But if Williams can eat into that, if they just turn on Cam Akers once again, then maybe we have a little bit of a situation. Sorry, I had to move the screen over there for you. But this is the interesting part. We have PUKA. Oh, man. Until this guy actually plays and I hear what his name is, like actually pronounced, I'm just going to go with Naka. Let's just call him PUKA. Old PUKA is here. We have him at, 3.1% market share. He's just been getting a lot of buzz. And there is most definitely room on this roster for targets to go to you. So with his 3.1%, that puts him at wide receiver 131 for the year in terms of projections. But let's just say he's better than Tutu Atwell. That wouldn't be a big surprise to anyone now, would it? So let's just put Tutu Atwell down at 5. Maybe Van Jefferson just continues to be the guy that he's always been. We'll put him at 8. We'll put Ben Skoranek down to 7. And what are we looking at? We have 12% to fill in. Let's just say he ends up being the wide receiver 2 on this team. All of a sudden, it's not great by any means because we haven't adjusted his touchdown market share, which would obviously go up if you gave him 15% of the market share of targets. But that instantly, just that bump up in market share puts him at wide receiver 65 for the year. Like the Rams aren't good. Stafford appears to be healthy at the moment. Not every pass can go to Cooper Kupp. Now, a lot of them are going to go between Cooper Kupp and Tyler Higbee, who I think is one of my favorite tight end targets in the draft right now. I haven't projected at tight end number 9. In my rankings, he's tight end number 9, so I do like him a lot, especially in both PPR and half-point PPR formats. Like even to take a look at his distribution, we scroll over a little bit, you can see when you make your projections, you get your 3 different types of scoring. Higbee would be 171 fantasy points in PPR, 136 and half point, only 100 in standard league. So a far more valuable PPR half point, especially a PPR player, rather than a standard league player, just because you don't expect the Rams to have that many touchdowns. They use Cooper Kupp so much in the red zone or potentially try to run it that there's just not that much for Higbee to go around. But on a week-to-week consistency basis, I see no real difference between him and Pat Freiermuth. In fact, I like Higbee better than Freiermuth on a consistency basis. Freiermuth might just be better, become a bigger part of the offense and score way more touchdowns, thus making him the better fantasy player. That's on the table. You're not going to be, listen, if you can be like 40% somewhat correct with your projections on these guys. But I do think it's a coin flip between the two of them, and that's just simply not how they're being drafted right now. So be a value hunter and take Tyler Higbee in that circumstance. News out of the Browns camp, Jordan Wilkins signed with the Browns. So when he gets a carry in week 13, after you've forgotten the news that he signed with the Browns. Either Chubb goes down or he tweaks his ankle and needs to get his foot retaped, and then all of a sudden Jordan Wilkins gets a carry. You're like, the Browns. I thought Jordan Wilkins was retired. Dude pops up every single year, and you're like, totally forgot he was in the league. So he's on the Browns, so keep that in mind. Jacob Phillips has dealt with a ton of injuries, the linebacker on the Browns, through the first 2 years of being in the league, and there's going to be no year 3 for him. He tore his pec. He is out for the season. Talk a few more standouts this time around from the weekend, just kind of different things that we saw. Tank Dell, Houston. He did start over John Mechie. He's already moved up 15 spots in DK Best Ball because of his performance. Now, Robert Woods didn't play in that game, so it's likely that he's not going to be a starter, but they seem to like him. They seem to think that he's a big play guy down the field and someone, especially in dynasty leagues, that if Tank Dell can mature with CJ Stroud, who did not look good at all, that if he's still going to be the quarterback there for the next presumably 3 to 5 years, that maybe Tank Dell is someone that can grow with him. So a decent target. In your redraft league, you probably don't have to worry too much about him unless he continues to have a great preseason, continues to get used. But he's been kind of the talk of Houston camp so far, so it wouldn't be completely shocking to see him have somewhat of a viable fantasy role so far this season. Sam Howell looked pretty good. And the big thing is, and Jake mentioned this on the Breakout Show 2 weeks ago on Mayo Media Network. Again, sub to the podcast, sub to the channel. You can find all of this stuff that is up there already. Jake back on Tuesday to do the top 150 rankings. Don't forget that. I have my quarterback 18 in terms of the rankings, which is behind that, veteran tier like Russell Wilson, Kirk Cousins, Stafford, all those guys. He's just behind that because I do think he's going to run. Jake kind of nailed that one. And that's what we saw in the preseason. He had a nice connection with Jahan Dotson for a touchdown, and he was using his legs a bunch. Even if you suck at quarterback, but you can use your legs, you're viable in fantasy football. Not at the highest end if you're Sam Howell, but maybe he just is better in year 2. Or maybe we barely saw him in year 1. So maybe in year 2, this is something that he can do a little bit better. So a decent sleeper target at quarterback, Sam Howell. 2 quarterback league, super flex league. That's what you're looking at with Sam Howell right now. Anthony Richardson didn't run much in his debut, but he was 7 for 12. Alec Pierce dropped a pass that probably should have been a touchdown for him. 7 for 12 with a pick and 67 yards. If he starts week 1, which I think that he's going to do, I have him quarterback number 9 for the year. He is an active target of mine in fantasy football because he is Justin Fields, Jalen Hurts, these type of guys that, Jalen Hurts is sort of an anomaly now because he had such a good year last year passing to go along with rushing the touchdowns and rushing on the ground that he was just amazing. Fields sucked last year and was amazing at fantasy football. Richardson could be exactly the same thing, but at way less of the cost as Justin Fields. His number's going to go up as the preseason goes along. I don't want to say that there's nothing too high to take him, but if you can get him, and you probably don't even need to spend a 9th round pick on him. But around pick 100 is where I want to get him. So that's where I'm going to start taking him. And I'll pass on everyone else up the board. So that's what I'm looking at with Anthony Richardson. Lamar is the other guy that I was thinking of in my quarterback rankings. Again, just hit the description, find the rankings. With these guys, I actually wrote down what their ranking was next to their name. James Cook played pretty well for 4 touches, 20 yards, and a touchdown for him for the Bills. It's really difficult to go with the Bills. And we'll take a look at this in terms of the projection season long. I am at running back number 19 right now, and that's lower than what my projections have on him right now. We can see James Cook, running back number 13 on the year, and that's only with 40% of the touches out of that backfield. 27% go to Josh Allen, 23% go to Damian Harris, 10% go to Latavius Murray, and that's only with a touchdown share of 28%, a market share of receiving at 9%. So, if James Cook even finds himself on the field for 65% of the snaps this year, he's going to be amazing. And he's not being drafted that way. So he's a potential running back 1 at running back, 2-3. Back end 2 prices right now. So that's what I'd be looking for with James Cook. And we jump over to the Miami side of the ball. We saw Devon A-Chain look pretty good. Now, the other guys weren't playing. So when you get all of the touches, that's going to look pretty good on you. But we do have him projected as the highest amount of touches out of the backfield. And the biggest thing from week 1, which I saw, 4 catches on 4 targets. If he's going to be used in the receiving game, he's going to be viable. He's going to be probably the best Miami back. And just being in on 3rd downs, 2-minute drills is going to keep him on the field. He's projected as running back 37, but there is substantial upside there. 10 carries, 25 yards, so they're not afraid to give him the ball on the ground, even though he was somewhat ineffective running the ball in the preseason. But 4 catches, that is the big one that I'm looking for. A few other notes, Baker played way better than Trask, and I do think that Mike Evans is a sneaky good fantasy pick this year. No one wants Mike Evans, but if Baker's just going to chuck it up, Mike Evans is a fine enough recipient. It's not that I don't like Godwin. I like Godwin better than Evans, but Godwin is still being drafted as if he is good, which he is. Evans is being drafted like he sucks at this point. And, maybe he is washed. Maybe that's the case. I don't happen to think that's going to be the circumstance right now. Justin Fields, three completions for 129 yards and 2 touchdowns. I am at QB 6 for the season, mainly due to rushing, and maybe this opens it up a little bit. I don't want to take anything away from the 2 touchdowns, but none of those passes were past the line of scrimmage. I don't think that DJ Moore and Khalil Herbert screen passes are just going to arbitrarily go for 80 yards every single week. Now, the screen pass game for the Bears should be more effective because of the threat that Justin Fields presents on the ground. I concede that point. That just seems like a big out. I wouldn't get too hyped for Justin Fields passing based on those numbers, because put into context, didn't really do anything, all right? He's going to be a great fantasy player. I still do not believe in the Bears. Their offense should be slightly better, but not massively better. Like DJ Moore can only do so much, right? And Fields still takes way too many sacks. Fix that, maybe all of a sudden it's a different story. But until he's actually throwing like lasers on point down the field, like 35 yards, 40 yards, 20 yards, not dump passes at -4 yards, then it's a different story. But that's not what we're seeing through preseason games. So don't let the box score fool you on that one. Last one, Zach Wilson showing out in the Jets blowout win. Probably impressing those XFL scouts who were looking at him this year. But he's the backup, so I wouldn't worry too much about him. RunTheSims.com, free projections. RunTheSims.com code Mayo. Get you 10% off all the simulations, all the betting tools, and it's all tools. It's not content. It's just tools that you can customize and run simulations. If you're serious about winning, I cleared 20K last year, and I usually lose at football. And it was the first year I used Run the Sims 2 years ago. I won around like $3,000, which I thought was awesome. I won over $20,000 last year at Run the Sims using the tools provided to me. I wouldn't expect myself to win that much again. I had some good runs, some good breaks, but if I can make myself a positive player, Run the Sims code Mayo is where you need to be, because you can probably do the same thing too, and more tools coming before week 1 starts, especially for the very serious daily fantasy player. But you don't need to be super serious. If you just want to bet props, it is an amazing tool. So I suggest that you go check it out. Subscribe, rate and review 5 stars to the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast, and subscribe to Mayo Media Network. All right, thank you all for watching. Back on Tuesday with Jake Seeley for the top 150 rankings. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!